hand to Lesley Mottla.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Welcome. I'm so excited to be here and be kicking off the day. I was the one who had the clicker, by the way. Happy to be here and kicking off the day. What a beautiful, beautiful location for Delight. So I recently met this gentleman here. He's a hotelier. His name is Horst Schulze, and he was a co-founder of the Ritz-Carlton Company and was their president for a couple of decades. So he was the one who brought the 5-star luxury hotel experience really to the Americas over from Europe. And he's now in the process of creating a 6-star hotel experience, an ultra luxury experience, and creating a new 6-star category. And it was great to meet him and listen to him because, there's just a lot of wisdom that you learn from folks. And he basically has all these mantras that he teaches his employees. He trains his employees. And he is really kind of an old school guy. He's European. He's got a very, very thick accent. And he's the kind of guy who yells a lot, right? Not because he's angry or anything, but he's just really, really passionate. And so when he talks to his employees and trains his employees, he says, delight and deliver experience excellence, and you'll keep the guests. And he's constantly kind of yelling this, to his employees. And so I thought that was fitting because his passion, really exudes the importance of, delighting customers, designing great customer experiences so that you can deliver to your customers and your employees and to the business. So I'm going to talk today about 6 steps that Zipcar uses to design for delight, design customer experiences, and deliver for our customers. And before I do that, though, I want to talk a little bit about some guiding principles. The guiding principles are, we've got 3 guiding principles that I think are kind of foundational to those 6 steps. The first one is have a human-centered mission and have human-centered values. Mission and values, some people think, that's kind of cheesy, but having worked with them now for many, many years, they actually help, right? And if you want to be a company that's delivering delight, you really have to have human-centered, people-centered values and missions. So our mission is, enable simple and responsible urban living. It's not about us, it's about doing something bigger for people in urban areas. We've got a couple of values that are very people-focused. One is keep it simple, and by our value proposition, cars by the hour or day, and gas and insurance included, we're trying to keep it simple, right? We're trying to make it easy for people to choose us over car ownership or augment their car ownership. And another value that we have is just obsess about the member experience. And our member experiences, we try to make it simple: join, reserve, unlock, drive. And we have people all over the company, not just myself, everyone in the company is supposed to obsess about the member experience. So that first, ground rule really is have mission and values that are people-centric and are centered around delivering great experiences. The second grounding principle for us has to do with experience. What? You lost me. So the second principle has to do with experience drives loyalty, and loyalty drives growth. We believe that great experiences don't just happen; you actually have to design them. And what we show is some data, external data, to prove this. So if you are in a company that maybe isn't focused on customers, there's actually external data to help you make the case for why your company really needs to focus on customer experience, the overall customer experience. We define the customer experience as the overall feeling that you get, the sum of all your interactions, and the perfect customer experience, which is what we're striving for, is a set of interactions that consistently, exceeds expectations. And of course, you really need to have the foundational expectations being delivered before you can exceed. So you really need to understand what those are. So we're striving to deliver and delight towards the perfect customer experience. So with regards to that external data that supports experience drives loyalty, loyalty drives growth, a couple of experts, Bruce Temkin, does studies on customer experience ratings in different industries, looking at the sum of the interactions in different industries, and shows, those industries with higher ratings have customer bases that are more likely to recommend their product or service. It's all intuitive and simple, but there's data out here that actually proves it. Another industry expert, Bain, and their Net Promoter System studies the impact of loyalty, just people coming back, keeping the guest. They look at how loyalty leaders actually experience twice the growth as the average company in their category. So again, the point being, a grounding principle is that experience drives loyalty, loyalty drives growth, and you really need to design the experiences. They don't just happen. The third grounding principle that's critical is really understanding your own ecosystem, whether you're selling a product or a service. And Zipcar has, it's a very complicated service. It's a service and has a complicated ecosystem underneath, a lot of moving parts. But by understanding our own ecosystem, then we know where to design. We know where the problems are. We know where the opportunities are. We know how to evolve the service. So I'm just going to take you through a high level of what that is. We put the member at the top. We've got all these moments of truth that they come through, that they interact with us on, whether it's learning about the service, joining, driving. And that's the front of the house, basically, to use like the restaurant analogy. Some people use the theater analogy, front stage, backstage. On the back of the house, we've got operations and systems and tools, and we've got a lot of operational pieces. We've got people who are buying cars, people who are selling cars, people who are getting insurance for cars, people who are figuring out where we're going to buy fuel, people who are optimizing where to put cars. So there's a lot of moving parts in the back of the house. And all those things, obviously, while indirect, they impact the member, right? And how do we connect these? We connect them with the key touch points. So whether it's the location where you go to get your car, the car itself, a call center agent, the mobile apps, SMS, email. So you can see we've got many, many touch points to be thinking about with regards to experience design. So grounding principle is to have that ecosystem, have a picture of the ecosystem so that people can get their arms around where you're focusing as a company, where you're making improvements, where you're evolving. So it's a good centering tool to have. So now I'm going to go through 6 steps that we've kind of devised over the last 6 years or so while at Zipcar. And I'm going to give you some examples of how Zipcar uses some of these steps, but also how some other smaller disruptive companies are using some of these steps. So we'll just go right through them. The first is be with your customers, right? You need to walk in their shoes. It sounds obvious, and I know, to this room it's very, very obvious, but we spend a lot of time with our customers. We drive with them. We watch them drive. We sit in the back as like quiet little mice and watch them drive and watch them have fun and watch them have anxiety and confusion. And we spend time in their homes. We want to understand how they think about Zipcar in the context of all their choices around urban transportation. So, this basically goes with the principle that people can't tell you what they want, someone said this, but their behaviors will. And we believe in this methodology quite significantly to really provide insights that help us to grow as a company. Another example of a company that's doing this, a smaller startup called Custom Made, I don't know if you've heard of them, they're a marketplace, and they're funded by Google Ventures. They're trying to bring people who want to buy custom things with people who make custom things. So if you want like a kidney-shaped African maple dining table with wrought iron or something, this is where you would go, and you can find an artisan, a maker, who will craft it for you. And so they're still kind of working through their business model, and they realized, we don't know a lot about these makers. So they said, okay, let's get out, let's go meet the makers. Let's see how they do their craft, whether they're jewelry makers or woodworkers. And so they went out and spent all this time with the makers and tried to understand, how their business, how do they get business? How are they going to feel about working online and getting customers online? And so just by doing that, they were able to really understand the context and the thought process of the makers, and they came out of that with like 3 different things that they could test, right, to figure out how to bring the buyers and makers closer together faster, and to how to increase the transaction times. And so they finally settled on an invitation-based model versus like a subscription model or something like that. And basically what they've done is they've made, a better experience for the buyer, a better experience for the maker, and they've shortened the transaction time to an actual product being made, which means custom made gets a little piece of that transaction, right? So by being with their customers, they improve the experience. They delight for the customers, but they're delivering for their business as well. Second step is imagine the ideal. This is basically taking your insights and allowing yourself and your teams to say, what's the ideal experience look like without any constraints of resources, technology, time, all those constraints that we often have. Let's say what the ideal experience could look like, and then backcast. Figure out a couple of big ways to get to that vision so that we can actually leapfrog other competitors and things like that. That's why the frog's there. Instead of just going and doing incremental changes towards not much of a goal. And this is a model that we adopted from Continuum, which is a design consultancy out of Boston. So backcasting is, it's just a powerful mechanism for you to set a vision for where you're going with your experience. A company, I think, that's done a great job imagining, the ideal is a company called Moo. They're a London-based company that's working on business cards. They're trying to disrupt the traditional business card and online printing industry. And what they did was, they did research with their customers and spent time with their prospects and understood from that the people who are in small businesses or sole proprietorships really have a desire to express their personal brand and really market their own, company through their cards. So they said, let's, what would the ideal be then with regards to business cards? And so from that, from letting themselves, say, what's the ideal, they've created these, really cool kind of leapfrog products, whether they're business cards that are, of a very different shape and premium thickness, or something they call Printify, which is the ability to have different images on all your business cards, right? So it's, they're bringing something that's like new and fresh to an industry that was kind of old and stayed, with the white business card. So Moo, kudos to Moo for imagining the ideal. Design the whole experience. What I mean here is don't get hung up on interaction silos so much, and I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. At Zipcar, we had a problem. The problem statement was the customer can't find their car. Right, that's not a good problem for us to have, and so when we broke down that problem, we realized it wasn't because the car wasn't physically where it was supposed to be. It was an issue with wayfinding, right, with how people were figuring out how to get to a location that they had never been to before. So we broke down the front of the house, the back of the house, the whole experience to say, how can we improve this? Because it also, was impacting our call center, right? People were calling and saying, I can't find the car. So we, on the front of the house side, we spent time with people, watching them trying to get to cars, following them around, not in a creepy way, but just, they knew we were following them. They said it was okay. And seeing what kind of cues they used, right? Some people used visual cues. Some people used the app. Some people printed things out. Other people used, just their instincts. And, so the point was that there are different personas with regards to wayfinding, and we needed to provide more tools to people so that they could find their locations. So some of the things we did there on the member side was we went out and started to take photographs of all our locations. We take photographs of all the locations so that they're now in the apps. So you can see a location as you approach it or as you get to it. We also, improved all the signage. We made it more accessible, visible. We added signage not necessarily just at the location, but in areas approaching the location. So that type of insight really enabled us to improve the member experience. Then the other part, as I talk about whole experience, was the operational side. So, like here in Portland, we have a team in Portland who, they're the ones who select the locations where we put cars. And we realized that when we dug into it deeper with them, we realized that they didn't really have customer-focused criteria to pick a location. They were just, placing cars wherever they could get a placement. So we worked with them to develop customer-focused criteria to select a location. Things like, how's the lighting? How accessible is it? Is there flexibility to add a lot of different signage? Things like that. And then through that, we also created a certification program. So now people in every market are certifying their locations so they meet a certain standard. And basically, what we're trying to communicate with our operations team is our location is really our storefront, right? We're a self-serve business. So let's treat it like our retail storefront location. So that's an example of how we think about the whole experience versus just kind of honing in on one little area. Another company I think that's doing a great job on thinking about the whole experience is Dropbox. Dropbox is a startup in the Bay Area, and this has to do with employee experience. They saw that interns who were having a wonderful internship at the company were not accepting job offers from Dropbox. They were going to Apple and Google and Facebook and some of those other companies. And so the director of People Ops, which is what they call their HR team, which I think is great, decided to really unpack that. Why is that happening? We're giving them good offers. Why are they not, accepting? So by doing that, they realized that a big influencer of the decision was people's, family, their parents, were really influencing where they should go because the parents were saying, well, you should really go to a very stable company. And we don't know this Dropbox, right? And so what they designed was a bring your parents to work day, where they invited the parents to come to Dropbox, and for the weekend, they paid, it was all expenses paid, and they, showed them around Dropbox and talked about the vision and all the opportunities that their kids would have, and then they ended, the weekend with a nice cruise on the bay to see how great it would be in San Francisco. And so by thinking about that whole experience, rather than just saying, oh, it's the offer and the benefits and the money, they were able, to increase the number of interns that were actually taking job offers from Dropbox. Humanize the details. So Zipcar is largely a self-service business, right? You don't really interact with any people unless, something goes wrong. So when we think about designing for delight, we try to empower our employees kind of all over the world where we have locations to really take opportunities to wow people, to surprise and delight people, and just be empowered to take it on themselves. And this is an example where a couple was getting married. They reserved a Zipcar for their getaway car. It's not a getaway car. It's like a wedding car. Getaway cars is if you're wrong, you're bank. I've obviously been married too long. And so they had reserved kind of a basic Mazda or something. And the team understood that this couple was getting a car for their wedding, so they switched the reservation to a beautiful red Mini convertible. They made sure it was super clean, and they decorated it. The Zipster team decorated it, and so when the couple came out to get their car after the wedding, surprised and delighted it was this cool car and not the kind of boring staid Mazda. So that's just a good example of in a business where it's largely digital and largely self-serve, really empowering your employees to take the next step is really going to impact, first of all, it feels good to the employees, it feels good to the customers, and you're going to build a better loyalty base, right? You're going to keep the guest, right? So things like this, I think, are very, very powerful, even if you're doing them, occasionally. Another company that is really doing a nice job with Humanize the Details is Warby Parker. They're another disruptor. They're disrupting the eyeglass space by eliminating the middleman and designing their own frames so that you can get cool frames at a lower price. But again, it's largely online. And they were concerned because they didn't have as much brick and mortar presence as the other traditional retailers. They were concerned about that whole interaction of when you're trying on frames and people are like, oh, I like that, I don't like that, that looks good, that doesn't look good. So what they did is humanize the details there. They have a try-on program where they'll send you, I think it's 5 frames that you can try on. And they've taken it to the next level and said, hey, take photos of yourself, send your selfies over to our social team, and we'll give you feedback on how the frames look, based on whatever it is you're trying to accomplish with what you're buying. So again, a really, really nice touch, right? And taking that interaction and humanizing the details through social channels and snail mail. Recovery as opportunity. Again, in our business, because that ecosystem, there's a lot of complexity. A lot of stuff can go wrong. The externalities weren't really highlighted on that ecosystem, but we have to deal with weather and traffic and different driving skills and flat tires. So we know that things can go wrong, and so we design for that. We try to design for it and be ready for it. So I want to give you an example here. Let me just say, first of all, everyone was fine in this. It has a very happy ending, but it's it's an example of what can happen during a Zipcar day. So what happened here was the local team got word that this had happened, and they know to use this as an opportunity to turn negative into a positive. It's called the service recovery paradox. So they took a couple of Zipcars, some Zipsters. One person got the bride and took her over to her wedding, which was on the Boston Common, and she actually got married. And then another person had a couple of Zipcars and some cold water. It was a real hot August day, and some snacks, and brought those to the duck boat people. And then also shuttle, if the duck boat people didn't want to wait around until this mess got kind of cleaned up, took them, back to their hotels and things like that. So just another good example of something has gone wrong, and how do we use recovery as a big opportunity? And then the last step is measurement, right? And just kind of doing it all over again. From a measurement standpoint, what we do as a company is we have a kind of a series of measurements. At a high level, we've got customer-focused measurements that everyone in the company can understand and get their arms around, things like overall experience and loyalty and things like that. And then as you get down into that ecosystem, we're measuring at all the different touch points and levels so that people working on the design teams can get a good picture of not only the insights that we're getting from being with our customers, but the data, and marrying those two so that we can say, okay, where do we need to focus our attention, either to improve or to evolve the service. So measurement, is just a critical component for us. So those are the 6 steps that you can think about. You can use those and the guiding principles that I talked about. So you can use those to delight your customers, hopefully keep the guest, and deliver for your customers, your employees, and your business. Thank you.